There's four primary cities. I call them the four horsemen of the office apocalypse, okay? There's New York, Washington, D.C., Chicago, and San Francisco. I think the most beautiful architecture in North America is in those cities. And not only that, but there's a hollowing out. So what are you going to do, especially when you see Manhattan and San Francisco and downtown Chicago? It's like, what is going to happen? How do you revitalize these cities, especially with all these empty office buildings? There is only one way, and that is to convert these buildings.
What's better than drywall for faster, better interiors? Why are developers chasing hotel projects in entertainment zones? And could mass timber's biggest advantage have nothing to do with carbon? Today's guests, Doug Hayden and Mitchell Brooks of Arthroado, break down how prefab, hospitality, and mass timber all fit into a smarter, faster way to build. Doug is the founder and CEO, and Mitchell is the director of design at Arthroado, a development company taking a prefab-first approach to vertical expansions, office conversions, and new builds with a sharp focus on hospitality and senior living. We got into it all. Prefab finishes that build faster, look sharper, and simplify future remodels, how mass timber works with vertical additions, and why cities pouring money into tourism, entertainment districts, and conference centers absolutely need more experience-driven hotel accommodations, which Arthroado is stepping in to deliver. If you're into smarter building systems, development trends, or just geeking out on how the future of construction is taking shape, this one's for you. And a quick heads up before we get into it. If you're serious about mass timber and want to learn from leading experts, plus meet future partners in person, the Mass Timber Group Summit is happening this August in Denver. Early bird pricing is ending soon, so now's the time to grab your spot. And as a podcast listener, you can use code PODCAST, all caps, to save $50 at masstimber.group. So with that, let's get into it.
My name's Doug Hayden. I'm the CEO and founder of Arthroto. Arthroto got started, it was coming out of COVID, and we're based in Calgary. So what was going on with Calgary was a lot of empty office buildings, and the city of Calgary, even before COVID, started a program to do adaptive reuse. In other words, they wanted to take empty office buildings and convert them into residence or hotels. So heads and beds. So they came up with a program where they would give anybody that owned an office building, if they wanted to convert it, they would give them $75, basically like a tenant improvement allocation. So they would give them, upon completion of that residence and permit, that they would get $75 a square foot for every square foot they converted into residential or a hotel. That appealed to a lot of groups. They earmarked about $200 million for that. It was basically forwarding tax dollars, and the program's now oversubscribed. It's still, we believe, active. They're using a mix of federal dollars and provincial dollars and city dollars to make this happen. But most of it came from the city offsetting taxes. So we saw that and we thought, oh, there's an opportunity to do what I had as a background, which was I have done real estate. But prior to that, I did office interiors, all prefabricated. No drywall, by the way. We detest drywall. So it was all materials. And there's a reason for that. It's simply about speed and quality and a number of other issues we'll dive into. But anyway, long story short, it looked like a real business opportunity to take these old buildings, convert them with prefabricated interiors to residential and hotels. The Calgary market, although good size, just was not big enough to make a business case out of it. We were going through COVID. It was clear coming out of COVID that it was going to be really hard to get people to go back to the office, especially what we call B buildings. And what happened was, you hear about A buildings, so we call them marquee office buildings. You hear about those. Folks wanted to go back into those buildings because they were getting great, again, TI dollars. As a matter of fact, in New York, the average TI right now is over $150 a square foot on a 5-year lease if you go to move into an A building. They will design your space for you, and it's beautiful space. So B buildings don't do that. They can't do it. They want you to renew a lease. That's not happening. A lot of people don't go back the full 5 days. If anything, it's probably 3 at best. So we just saw all these changes going on. That was now after COVID. It's basically nationwide in the United States and to some extent Canada, which is where we're focused. And we have a wholly owned U.S. subsidiary. So our primary focus for adaptive reuse and almost everything we do is the U.S. market. And it's typical. U.S. is 90% of what we're looking at. Canada is about 10%. So anyway, long story short, it was about taking these old office buildings. So we learned very quickly we'll have to acquire them at distressed prices and then take that building and convert it into, we do one of three things. We convert to a hotel, which is about 50% of buildings being converted right now, if they're in the core of a major city, are being converted to a hotel, or a mix of hotel and residence, which is the other thing we focus on. Residence being you get all the amenities of a hotel with your residents. And then the other is we just started looking at seniors housing as well. And we're not talking that traditional kind of what people pop into their heads, that type of seniors housing. It's really a mix of all the different types of housing we do. So last I'll leave off, and then I'm going to hand it over to Mitchell, is my background is actually before this was film and television and technology. And property development is a lot like getting a film made or a movie made in just the amount of work and the amount of things that you have to tap into, everything from finance to arranging for, production crews, which would be construction crews, all the rest of it. So they're very similar, and it's also the budgets are very similar. So it was, with my background, that's attuned to what we were doing. What we really liked about doing ground up development was the speed at which mass timber could help us. So when you're doing an office interior all prefab, the real advantage is you get a better product faster. And then we also looked at what's the technology out there that we could integrate because we're doing everything prefab. Can we integrate new technologies? And absolutely, low voltage wiring, sensors, you name it, all of that is available off the shelf. So long story short, what we really do is we innovate. We can build as much offsite as possible. So if you're buying a building, what's happening typically, if you go through it, you got to get your MEP ready, and then you start to build, on site. We compress that cycle. So you get your MEP ready in the building. Meanwhile, you're building everything off site. So as soon as your MEP is ready, you're coming in with a pre-done product, if you will. So you can reduce times if we're converting a building by about 25%. So you're turning keys faster, ROIs faster. If you're building ground up, once the podium is in place, if you're using mass timber and prefab interiors and exteriors, we're probably, honestly, we think we'll get it dialed into about 70% faster than conventional construction. That's a big hit on the bottom line. So you can build a superior building, superior products faster. Your ROI comes in. That's what you're getting. You're getting a better product quicker. So I'll hand it over to Mitchell, and he can talk more about kind of what he's doing.
Yeah, I'm Mitchell Brooks. I'm the Director of Design at Arthroto Industries. I have been in the construction and design industry for the last 17 years. I'm also a licensed designer, interior designer in Alberta, and been working with the Arthroto Group. So, based on our hospitality and hotel and residence approach, working on our branding, our design guidelines, our amenities and facilities benchmarking to really take the prefabricated interior approach and evaluating different properties and buildings around North America to look at how we can use adaptive reuse, mass timber construction, or a hybrid of the two to expand on existing projects and sites to bring in our construction methods.
Got it. Got it. Well, thanks for sharing, guys. Before we started recording, we kind of dove into a little bit about what you guys are doing, and you guys are taking an approach across multiple different, development opportunities, from new building to retrofits or conversions, if you will, and then also like Mitchell, you had talked about, expanding on top of buildings, right? Like adding floor levels to them. So I guess, like, why did you guys decide to get into this markets or these markets specifically? Like, I know you had talked about, Doug, like the opportunities from like a financial incentive, but I guess where do you guys see yourselves fitting in that's different than another office conversion company or a different ground up developer that's also looking at prefab? Like what's unique about you guys?
I think the biggest one is that we understand how interiors can be all prefabricated. And we also understand on the tech side how you can incorporate technology into the environment. It was really just there's nothing necessarily new about what we do. If anything, I'll point you to Shop Architects out of New York.
Yeah.
They to build those massive, what I call the pencil buildings, right? Because you're talking super talls that nobody's ever seen anything like that, where you can design and build a building that basically skinny, that tall, and that quickly. And what what I really liked about what Shop Architect's approach was, and if you know them, then you know that it is sort of half architects, half engineers, and a lot of their engineers come from aerospace. And it was like they early on said, we can do a lot of the construction off site. So yeah, you're still using concrete, you're still pouring and everything else. But when you look at how, and by the way, they still haven't used prefab interiors. Um, but it was sort of like taking what they did was they did assembly off site. So we just took that way further and said, oh, there's, because of my background working in prefabricated office interiors, it was, oh, okay, I'm starting to put two and two together. And the real advantages here are the speed and the fact that the materials are of superior quality in the whole 9 yards. So that was really how we're looking at it.
Tell me about prefab interiors, because again, before we started recording, you basically said like we don't do drywall, like we detest it for many
Yeah.
different reasons. But if I'm looking at 99.5% of the buildings I've ever walked into, they're all drywall. So like, how are you replacing everything from the ceiling to the wall with prefab interiors? What does that look like?
It looks amazing. It's beautiful. It's stunning. And here's, I'll give you an example of just how screwed up conventional construction is when it comes to interiors. So if you're using drywall, if you've ever been in a construction site or done it, and by the way, my grandfather owned a drywall company. I used to be the sander. Okay, like if there's one job that will motivate you to get your ass out of that and into school, that's probably it. But anyway, you just it's a material that yeah, it's inexpensive, which is why it's used. It's also traditional in the sense that it's there, everybody understands it, the infrastructure's there for it, everything else. But there was a project in Dallas where they were taking the top 10 floors of a building and they were converting it into residential. And they thought it was going to take them about 40 weeks. Well, it almost took double that. Where they really ran into problems was when the drywall started showing up on site. And, it's trades are tripping over. You got drywall, and inspectors have to get in and have a look at things before they're covered up, the whole 9 yards. But what happened was when they started putting in the drywall, then you've got to mud it, tape it, and paint it. Well, it was taking really long because the building sealed for the drying process. That added literally weeks and weeks, like 4 weeks to the process. Damage, the whole 9 yards. And that's just drywall, not to mention all the other things about that you get with prefabricated interiors, the advantages. So basically, when you do a prefab, all you're really doing is you're dropping in things that will allow you to connect when you bring in a wall. And by the way, the wall isn't complete, okay? The wall is simply a frame with the wires and everything already in it and the plumbing already in it. And what you've done in that building is prepped for the MEP, so the mechanical and electrical plumbing. They're just done differently. So you've got spider connections. Everything will connect on site versus having to run everything into the walls and do all the rest of it. But drywall's toxic. The biggest issue that we face though is there's what, over 20,000 codes across North America, building codes. You inspectors can interpret. Prefab has not been part of that process where it's seen as viable. So you run into lots of problems on inspections, and that is why a lot of developers will hesitate to use it. Now, in office, very different because we weren't messing with a lot of stuff. Even prefab in hospitals, by the way. And if you can do prefab in hospitals in that environment, trust me, the complexity in healthcare is far more than residential. And that's really where we cut our teeth on how much you can integrate into an interior with prefab is in healthcare. So, turn it over to Mitchell to help answer that question as well.
Yeah, so our prefabricated systems we're looking at, ideally, the goal is to completely move away from individually stud and framed walls and partitions and barriers and remove as much drywall as we can. So, when the biggest thing we run into with interiors, why drywall instead is great is for fire rated separations. So, we're looking at magnesium board products in a panelized system that can be produced offsite, delivered in an easy modular size that can be handled by an individual person, installed, rated, and then we use those separations and completely remove any of our building systems or services from those. So then we're looking at doing a prefabricated, almost furring system where we have a steel or aluminum frame go in and then a panelized MDF or finished product on top of that. And similar to what Doug was talking about, we're removing all of those building systems from those structural or non-load bearing fire rated safety building code required barriers and separations. And that gives us a huge advantage for our trades on site, future building improvements, the sort of protection of those services, as well as then when we get into hotels, we're looking at a different level of finishing. So we're looking at different wall coverings and those kinds of things that then create additional barriers. So in a conventional building, when you're putting wall covering, type 2 commercial grade vinyl covering that creates a vapor barrier, we no longer have those kinds of vapor barriers happening in buildings. We don't have that risk of mold or other kind of dusts that happen in construction. We're removing a lot of those environmental issues during construction. So once we're occupying a building, we don't have a lot of those concerns.
That what you said on like and this kind of touches back on the tech side of things too, but being able to one solve like some vapor maintenance accessibility issues, because like in mass timber, like one of the big things in the insurance industry is how are we handling moisture in terms of like there's a tiny little leak behind a wall somewhere, and a tiny little leak over 5 years turns into a big mold problem with wood, right? And so like when you guys are talking about, I'm imagining, you have a furring system or whatever with your panels that come in. It's very easy to one install a sensor behind that, but then two, it's very easy to like pop that panel off and be like, oh, there's a leak there, and put the panel back. Like I had to do some repair work on this house, right, with some water that got behind the wall, and I had to like cut out an entire sheet of drywall, pull the insulation out because it went undetected for a while, take out the framing, replace the framing, put the drywall back up, mud, texture, finish, paint, everything. Like just for like a small
Yeah.
home renovation project, it was huge. But I can't imagine doing that in like a 10-story building where the water leak went down three floors or whatever.
And then if you're in a hotel building, your room or number of rooms is closed, can't be rented out. You've got loss of sales. You've got to manage that work so you're not disrupting other guests. Where with a prefabricated interior, if someone has a really good time in their room and maybe doesn't leave it as pristine as it was, to repair a room, patch a room, anything like that, it's such a quick, relatively easy fix. Maintenance could go in, your room could be down for maybe minutes, maybe a couple hours, and you can turn it around so quickly.
And you can do, I just want to add to that as well. So you touched on sensors. So like our basic baseline, having been in real estate for 20 years around multifamily, the biggest damage occurs from flooding, and that's flooding from above, and gravity, right? So we do water detection, water arrest in everything we do. That's our baseline. There's not a project that will go up without water detection and water arrest.
Tell me about
All
water arrest, because I'm not familiar with that.
water arrest is simply if you detect water with a sensor. A couple of things. One is we do smart building, right? So smart unit, smart building. So immediately a sensor goes off, the occupant is going to know about it, right? It'll be an alarm, and also the building management building system will know about it. They'll, same alarm. Now that sensor can give you things like maybe flow rate because you're doing multiple sensors. One sensor goes off. Now you can immediately shut the water off in that unit if you have a valve. Right. So basically there's valves that are connected that you just shut off. They just electronically turn off. You can shut water off to an entire unit, a room, like those, that it's at that level. So in a hotel, we're going to obviously be shutting off. If we get one or two hits, we'll shut off in that particular room. But that's really how it works. It's simply a valve that's connected to a, basically smart management system. But that technology, here's the thing, that technology has been around for 30 years. And the damage done by flooded condos is crazy. Now we've talked to the insurance industry, and they will actually offset your insurance if you have that in your buildings. Again, that's why it's just a logical thing. So we don't see a lot of the tech as necessarily expensive. We see it as necessary. Like, why aren't you using these technologies that can save you time, money, all the rest? Also, I wanted to quickly point out that what we're focused on is prefabricated, not modular. So when we go in, let's say a bathroom, that's more a cassette. So it will go in, the inspectors can see the plumbing before the walls go on, if you will. And as Mitchell pointed out, it's really easy. Basically, they clip on Obviously, you couldn't get it off with a butter knife. You need a special tool because you don't want some kid messing with it. But if you got a bunch of rock stars staying in a unit and they're doing some damage, which by the way, it's really hard to put a hole into a solid piece of fire rated MDF. Okay, it is really hard. So you've got that going for you. You've got sound. The sound attenuation is far higher with what we're using. So you got better sound, you got all of that. But the big thing is that each piece that we do has a barcode on it. Literally everything is assembled. It has barcodes on it. So if you pull that off and you want to know the color that was used, the size of it, all the rest of it, you could literally take that barcode and get that information, build it on site for yourself, or just order it. And it will basically show up, within about a week. We think that we can do it all offsite. So, long story short, there's full documentation on everything that goes in. You're just using tech that already exists, right? Now, here's the other thing. I'll just tap on mass timber. When we looked at mass timber, what we loved about it, and it's kind of, when you look at it, it's not kind of the process you would think. If we use mass timber, we like it for the primary building structure, right? So the floors, cross-laminated timbers, the big timbers. As soon as we go in, as Mitchell pointed out, we're using different materials. We're using cement boards, like, magnesium oxide. We're using fire-rated MDF. We're not using drywall, but we're also not necessarily using wood. And on the exteriors, you'll see there's a lot of use of metal and glass as opposed to wood. So again, by the way, there's a company that we really like in Canada that builds photovoltaic exteriors that we would like to use and incorporate. So we've already been working with them to come up with solutions and it creates a lot of electricity. So there's all these things that we just looked at and said, we can integrate all of this, still get the speed, still get the quality. And, you've got a beautiful environment. I don't know if you've seen any of our proposals and our renderings that are out there, but
You sent me one. Yeah.
Mitchell and the team have done a great job of utilizing timber and that biophilic messaging throughout the units. Even if you have to encapsulate, like in San Francisco or in other places, we know how to do that properly.
So let me just talk about, so we've talked about why everything is so wonderful and the things that we're talking about, yet people are not doing it. Is it primarily cost? Is it lack of familiarity? I mean, obviously, like the more tech and sensors and things that you're putting in, there's added material, added labor. So there's obviously some added cost, but I guess if you're drywalling 10,000 square foot of a floor versus doing a prefab thing, does it purely come down to cost about why they're not being used, or what's the factors there?
So I'll go, and then I'm going to let Mitchell go on the actual kind of design side. That's why we had to become a developer. Nobody was willing to bite off on the whole enchilada. So they're doing prefab office, they're doing mass timber, they're doing all these different things, or prefab healthcare. Nobody's come together, and you're exactly right. There's two primary things that interrupt it. One is codes, and you're dealing with traditional construction methodologies, comfort level. So, and it's even getting financing around doing a prefab, because if it's around housing, Fannie, Freddie, now in Canada, CMHC does and has come up with a program that they will finance or guarantee financing on fully prefabricated buildings. In the States, not so much, right? So for your financing structure is different. There's a lot of different aspects to what you're doing. But at the end of it, that's why we just said, you know what, we'll do it ourselves. Okay, we're here to prove it out. We believe in it. We'll make it happen. And we'll also show why getting people in faster, why turning the key faster gets you not only a better building, but it's a better business case. Your insurance is less, right? The risk of capital is far less. And you do this once with the right capital partners, they're in for life, because at that point they see it. So it's like getting, a new airplane off the ground, right? Not everybody's going to trust, I don't want to speak for Boeing, but, you're dealing with a lot of that, uncertainty. You're going from aluminum to using, new materials, right? Like carbon fiber in the airplane industry, right? Imagine carbon fiber. They're using it in these skyscrapers, right? So there's just a lot of that. And if you're a guy that's been you're a code guy, you're an inspector, and this shows up on site, you're going to scratch your head. Additionally, there's a bit of union stuff going on in there. So we have to also accommodate unions, because in places like Chicago, there's still things where they won't allow a quick connect connection for electrical yet, So there's all kinds of aspects you still have to work around. Mitchell, you can sort of add to that if you like.
Yeah, I think we're finding all the advantages that we really love for it. There's a lot of the reasons why it hasn't been taken off and used a lot. So in terms of cost, like we've got, maybe a little bit, if your cost is balanced, a little bit higher at the beginning, we're looking at a longer term approach. So we're looking at, because of the speed, we can open and turn over and get a project and a site up and running quicker. Doug's catchphrase of heads in beds, where you get that whole process starting sooner, you're seeing your ROI come through quicker. And we're also looking at the long-term benefit. So maybe a panelized system with this additional fire rating, and then a furring system with a panelized system is a little bit more upfront and a premium, but we're able to get that premium base level. To get that up to then a really high-end luxury finish is a much lower increase in investment, as well as then the long-term benefits of the maintenance, the durability, the serviceability, as well as then we're trying to move away from a 7-year cycle that a lot of hospitality sees, where brands are completely redoing rooms. We can do that less frequently, lower timeline to turnover. And we've done some analysis, like we're looking at turning over, fitting out the interiors of hotel floors in a matter of weeks instead of months, as well as then like lead time. We're turning over floors and groups of floors so much quicker. And then we're also looking at trying to balance out a shortage or a decline in trades and labor. So we're finding that this is a great way to balance that out. You need less bodies on site, which is always ideal in a lot of these large scale projects. It's safer. A lot of the work that's being done is then being done by highly trained people in indoor, safe, climate controlled facilities. So you have better worker health, safety, and all of those other aspects that we're really bringing into our projects, just beyond the cost and sustainability of things.
Yeah. So I'm glad we're having this conversation, and we'll move on from this interior topic, because I could spend hours talking about it, because it's actually something I've been thinking a lot about just in the last week. But we'll put a pin in interiors, because I think we've kind of talked about the high points there. Tell me about some, I forget the technical term, but when you're adding levels to buildings with mass timber, because like not only are you converting buildings, but you can actually increase the building size and use. So tell me about what you guys are doing in that world.
Yeah, I'm going to let Mitchell take this one. There's a building that we looked at. It's in Calgary, and the original building owner, which was an engineering company, had actually built the building that they could, if they had to, add floors on. But Mitchell, you take it from there.
Yeah, so we're also looking at doing vertical extensions or vertical expansions on existing buildings, whether that be an existing parkade, an existing building. There's a building in Calgary we're currently evaluating. It's a 2-story concrete structure. It has a historical sort of half to it, but it was added on to about 10 to 15 years ago, and was 2-story structure originally designed to take an additional 2 stories of conventional steel concrete deck expansion. But we're looking at it as sort of, well, what do we bring to it with mass timber? Mass timber is a lighter structure. So we're currently evaluating it. I think that we could just without reinforcing any of the existing structure, put on 3 stories of mass timber, take a office design building, reconvert it to a hotel hospitality program. But then also looking at what's involved in reinforcing that structure to take it up to maybe 12 stories, maybe 18 stories, and what sort of is involved in that whole system of things too. So looking at a lot of different uses for it, and mass timber, we like the idea of it for a lighter structure, less foundation requirements, and just a lot of those things that go along with that.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense to me. And Doug, you had said something earlier that kind of piqued my interest, and we've kind of been talking about it. It's like we've been talking about mass timber in terms of efficiency, speed, prefab, offsite, et cetera. We haven't even said the word sustainability, carbon, any of that. So can you guys tell me like how you guys came into mass timber and what was like the value attachment to that? Because I know it wasn't initially the greener side of things. It was all on that kind of nature. And like you touched on a little bit, Mitchell, about, hey, it's lighter, less reinforcement or no reinforcement. lighter foundational engineering, or less, excuse me. Um,
Yeah.
what do you think as developers? Is the mass timber industry messaging in the wrong direction to reach more developer minded people by only hammering on this point and not this one?
That's really kind of up to the developers. I think you're hitting on a vein there of kind of, you know, it- you do see it wasn't really okay. Let me get to this point. When I ran across Oh Wow and what they were doing in California, when I saw that you could build a 30-story mass timber building and the speed at which you could build it, that's what piqued my interest, was doing, if we're doing offsite, holy cow, we could use mass timber prefab construction on the getting the tower up and getting the floors in and everything else. We come in with our prefab interiors, and then we close up with basically SIP panels that we've been working on designing as well. I mean, there's the holy grail of prefab building, right? Like it's not modular, because if you get into modular, you're dealing with accuracies that cause issues as you move up. You're off by 1 centimeter on the bottom, but amplifies itself as you go to the top. Whereas prefab, you adjust and correct along the way. Mass timber was the magic kind of bullet for, okay, now we can do everything prefab, ground up. And so, yeah, go ahead, Mitch. Yeah.
And I think too, like we really like the idea of mass timber because it can be an entire site mass timber. It can be a hybrid solution with an existing building or other new construction materials. And trying to take a look at sustainability just beyond renewable resources sourced within a certain kilometer radius. It has all of these other beneficial elements to it that kind of expand the idea of sustainability, that we're trying to really take an approach and a focus on as well. So I think definitely, I think you've got a great point, Brie. Like, there's so many aspects to it that we need to focus on kind of the bigger picture.
And what we really wanted to do at the end of the day was deliver a superior product, right? Faster, so that it came down to ROI. That, what developers want, not only a superior ROI, but just such a much better product at the end of the day. And part of that is just incorporating what we talked about, our tech, just to, make it, a more comfortable environment, as well as, like we said, the sensors. When you get into multi-story buildings, you pointed it out earlier, water's not your friend, right? So, and especially around timber, right? So how do we offset a lot of that? But it was speed and accuracy. So, and accuracy, not just in the measurements and what shows up, but accuracy in the costing. Because that's the other thing as a developer. If we don't have to, oh yeah, we'll need an extra 10 or 20% on top of all this just for all the, inefficiencies of the whole process. You don't see that as much if you're doing fully prefab. Your pricing's more dialed in, as is your time.
Yeah. Yeah. And that all makes a ton of sense. Another thing that I wanted to make sure that we talked about is you guys have what I think is a really good system and focus, and like what types of markets and where you guys are going, like the physical locales, if you will. Obviously, hospitality kind of and senior housing kind of being like a focus point of that. But can you tell me about why you guys are investing in hospitality specifically right now?
I'm going to let Mitchell talk to the zones, what we call the entertainment zones. Where we saw was, you've got these beautiful cities, and I call them, there's four primary cities. I call them the four horsemen of the office apocalypse. Okay, there's New York, Washington D.C., Chicago, and San Francisco. I think the most beautiful architecture in North America is in those cities, and not only that, but there's a hollowing out. So what are you going to do, especially when you see Manhattan and San Francisco and downtown Chicago? It's like, what is going to happen? How do you revitalize these cities, especially with all these empty office buildings? There is only one way, and that is to convert these buildings. They're not going to be used as office buildings again. You got a couple of uses. Either you convert them into something, and heads and beds is where we saw it, or you convert them into a warehouse or something else, or you tear them down, right? Which would be a real tragedy and not easy to do in a lot of these cities. So, and by the way, we only focus on cities that are open to doing this. And those are the cities that they have programs, or at least they're open to doing it. So the permitting process is sped up. Take a city like Toronto, same thing's going on there, but it could take you 4 years to get a permit to go from office to residential. So we can't obviously touch Toronto at this point. So that's really kind of when we looked at it, just what we saw as those cores. Now, why we focused on seniors in hospitality and residents, they all are open to having high levels of in-site, on-site service. And as well, they're in locations that are very walkable, truly walkable. Okay, so you don't necessarily need a car. By the way, old office buildings, not a lot of parking. And then you look at all the things that are going on, trends like automated car services, all the rest of it. There's just enough there that it made sense to focus on that. And so we work with a company called Arch Amenities, top amenities provider and operator in North America. And we connected with a hospitality group. So we really saw having on-site services as being crucial. And then that's what we sort of stumbled into the other thing, which I'm going to hand over to Mitchell, which is these what they're calling entertainment districts. And all of a sudden, we just lit up on entertainment. Anyway, Mitchell, you might want to talk about that.
Yeah, we're finding like people still want to travel, people are still wanting to get out and see the world, and we're seeing a really big increase in that business and leisure mixed travel. So we're finding across Canada and the US, a lot of cities and municipalities are working on developing their conference, cultural, entertainment, events districts. So in Calgary, Nashville, we're seeing it in Memphis. And a lot of those facilities, they're focusing on the event space, the conference centers, the sites. And then as soon as those open, we realize that we need places for people to stay. We need to house them. And we want to make sure that that's a quality, world-class, iconic, recognizable building and experience that ties into these state-of-the-art conference and event and cultural districts. So we're definitely seeing a push up in that kind of realm. And with everything we're seeing, these districts and the connection to the local community and the local environment, but then that sustainability aspect. So being able to bring in a sustainable prefabricated construction system like mass timber is a great opportunity to bring that. It brings the involvement of the community and the local makers and history into that kind of a space that really those spaces are needed on short term, quick notice. So just that speed and sustainability of mass timber is a great approach for that.
Yeah, I agree. And we had talked before we hit record about like where we do our conference in Denver. You know, at the Denver Art Museum, it's kind of an out of the box venue, if you will, but it's got right in the Civic Park Center, and then the hotel that we're talking about, which is exactly the niche that you guys are moving into. Is it's like we wanted a world class, sustainable, beautiful, comforting, warm, inviting stay experience for our conference attendees. And then like this hotel just opened. We went down, we toured it. They're absolutely wonderful. But literally, like from the moment you walk in to getting your key card to going into your room, like everything is a world class experience, from the aesthetics to the service, but also like all the little details. And I'm a details guy, right? Like my card is a wood card with an RFID chip. Like I hate seeing all these little plastic hotel cards. You see them all over the ground. They're like, they never work. They always have to go down to the desk and get locked out of your room. But it's like the stay experience for me is one of like the primary things that has the most impact on me when I go to conferences, when I go see a concert out of town. It's like the program that I'm going to see is great, right? I'd love for that to be a beautiful, welcoming environment too. But like, let's say I'm going to a concert, right? That's got its whole thing. Most of my time is going to be spent like in the hotel room, whether that's overnight or pre-event or post-event, like whatever. Like that part of it has a big impact on me. And as an event organizer and host, I looked specifically for exactly what you guys are talking about, to bring 300 to 400 people to come stay at that event, right? At that location. Like we tried other hotels, we toured other ones, and we were willing to pay a premium to go to this one, right? Or we could bring our negotiating power and even level the playing field. But then the experience is so much better that like, I think you guys are really moving in the right direction there, because like, you know, if or when we ever decide to move out of Denver, like that's literally what we start with is like, where's the venue? What are the accommodations?
Well, I think you should think of Calgary as your next one, but I'm going to add to that too. Um, it's interesting because we connected with a hospitality partner, and they're actually out of Switzerland. And this group came out of Marriott, and they formulated their own company. I don't know, it's like 20 years ago. Did a lot of luxury. They have a ton of luxury hotels, mostly in Europe. They were looking for a hospitality partner in North America. we connected with them because of the adapted reuse. So you go into sustainability, it's pretty sustainable if you can save an older building from being torn down. That's part of
Yep.
what they thought that was brilliant. And then when they saw that we were going into mass timber as well, the writing was on the wall. And so exactly what you're touching on, right? And we do think that there's a whole demographic out there that, and we'll call it a psychographic more than a demographic, that are looking for, does my, where's my eco footprint here? I want to stay, and we've actually, Mitchell and the team have done a great design effort in terms of exactly what you're talking about. So how do we make sure that it's not just about, sustainability and your footprint and all the rest of it. It's like walk the walk, right? Like you'll know if you're, and exactly as you pointed out, you know it if you're in it. So that experience is everything. And so really what we're doing, and go back to the movie business, we're setting the stage for the actors, which are the people that are coming, right? It's like, what's the experience, or the audience, right? What's your experience? So anyway, that, I don't want to kind of get off on that dovetail, but doing what we're doing, being a developer, especially if you're in hospitality or service, you have to view it as, who's your audience, and exactly that. How, not only how are they being entertained, but how are they being served?
And speaking to developers, I'm like, we've done some small scale developments, nothing like what you guys are doing, right? But like when you're talking about like market differentiation, like how, like why should people come to like your building? I can't remember where I heard it, but a friend of mine told me, he's like, look, there's three stages of something coming to market. There's one product, who has it, right? So like when hotels first became a thing, it was like, it's a hotel, we're gonna go there. And then it's okay, there's a bunch of hotels, who's got the best service, right? Then everybody catches up. Now all the service is excellent. The next fork of differentiation is who's got the best or the unique experience that I want to be at, right? So product, service, experience. And when you get to experience, there's no level higher than that, because if you have a great product, you have great service, you can put your experience factor to whoever you're trying to reach, right? Because like if I'm building a hotel and I'm targeting the event organizers for this conference center, right? This conference is 2 blocks away, this conference center, this is our primary audience, et cetera. Like you can tailor that experience to attract those kind of people. And like, that's something that's always stuck in my mind, specifically in mass timber. Cause it's like, everybody got some multifamily building. Everybody's got the building managers. They all do, if they're good, all on the same level. Well, what's unique about the experience of living in that building? Is it the biophilia? Is it the on-site amenities, right? Is it the structure? Is it the story? Like all of that is like where you get into that experience realm. And I think you guys are onto something big, and especially with you guys are doing mass timber on the new builds.
Well, and I'll just add to that. It's, you touched on it yourself. It's the details. It is details. It's, it is everything. Like every little thing is kind of critical to that. And the other is that we very much from day one have said we're only going to build, when it comes to hospitality, we're only going to build iconic buildings or develop iconic buildings. We want people to take a picture of the building. There's a really good example in Denver that everybody can see, and it's that new apartment building that was done by Mad Architects, where they literally have cut in like,
Oh, the canyon. Yep.
yeah. So that is the type of building we aim to be building. Is that, like, and obviously that's not a mass timber building. Could be though. But the point is that it didn't cost a whole lot extra to do that. But what's interesting, not only did they get premium rents, and I mean premium, but it filled up before it was finished.
Yeah.
So there's your ROI again. It's like what's the cost of not being unique? What's the cost of not having a great place, right? It's that it, and everything's changed. COVID really changed everything. Your demographic, people. When Mitchell's touched on it. When you travel, you want an experience. You've touched on it, and that's everything. All of it has to be baked in, and I think that's what's different about us. We're willing to say, we'll take it on ourselves, the extra cost, the whole 9 yards. We're going to take it on ourselves. We'll prove it ourselves. So that's where we're at.
Yeah, I love it. So what do you guys focus on next? Like what's on the immediate horizon for you guys?
Right now, we just put an offer in on a building in Calgary that we'd like to get and convert. We have several proposals out, Nashville, Memphis. We've been asked to come and work with a hotel group out of Memphis. They really like our approach, so co-development. Seniors is really critical. We've got an eye there. We did some proposals for the city of Edmonton. We're just going to, even if we don't get that, we'll simply just keep playing off that. We wanted to use that as an example to what we could do quick build in places like everywhere, right? But obviously places where they really need it. And just securing sites. That's really where we're at this point. And like I said, we have 4 main focuses for adaptive reuse, and then Calgary, and then new build, new construction. We're kind of very focused on that hospitality end. So, and by the way, we're looking at almost every market that we think is, well served by that, and that we think there's a real shortage of quality experiential places to stay. Just as an example, Calgary's short. I think they say they're short 5,500 rooms. We think it's probably closer to 10,000, right?
Yeah, and that's just rooms. That's not, I want to stay somewhere cool, rooms. Right?
Yeah. So, and there's even an approach to when you're doing hotels now, which is to build a residence tower and a hospitality tower. And yeah, so that's where we're getting at. Seniors aren't seniors anymore. Seniors want to live in the hotel experience, right? And have all those things. That's what they want. That's retirement for them. And you look at who's buying residents, like these luxury residents, and even the ones that aren't so much, right? But are residents served by a hotel, it's 55 plus.
That makes a lot of sense. So,
yeah.
Well, if somebody wanted to learn more about what you guys are doing and connect with you, where can they find you online?
Arthroto.com. And by the way, Arthroto is Greek for modular. Now, we did Greek for prefabricated, but it was this long. So Arthroto was available, the .com. So that's where the name of the company came from. So yeah, Arthroto.com.
Got it. Yeah. And either of you guys on LinkedIn?
Yes. Absolutely.
Okay. I'll link.
Please connect. Yeah, I love LinkedIn, man. I just love it. That's where I found you.
Well, that just goes to show, like, that's where this industry kind of lives online. But I'll link the website. Your guys' LinkedIn's down there. Last question. Like, if you guys, I'll let Mitchell go first this time. Mitchell, if you had somebody in an elevator for 30 seconds and you had to tell them about why prefab, why mass timber, why this different approach, what would you tell them?
I would say, like, it's the way going forward. It's the sustainable, socially responsible, durable, future-proof way to start building our spaces and our projects. It's the way that we're going.
Love it. And for you, Doug?
I'll just put an exclamation mark on it. Like
that's the quickest 30-second pitch I've ever heard. Exclamation. No. But thanks for hopping on with you guys. I learned a ton, and I'm excited to see you guys out in Denver this summer.
Yeah, same. I can't thank you and Nick enough. Thanks, Brady.